Hello everybody, and welcome to today's tarot deck review. I did get a request to review the Slutist Tarot deck, which I supported their Kickstarter, and so I wanted to go over a few things with you about this deck in particular. So in all honesty, I don't know what is going on with this deck, but they do have an Instagram page, which you can follow. And so I'm sure all the resources to purchase this deck are going to be on there. But just to give you kind of an idea of what it comes with, what I'm imagining the regular purchasing is going to be coming with is all you get is this insert for the description. So it's really concise. It's not a huge booklet, so that's kind of nice. And then the cards themselves. So again, as usual, here is my Morgan Greer, which is my base. This is like the standard size for tarot cards. And so these are just about exact. They're slightly wider, but it's almost exactly the same. So pretty standard in terms of tarot size. The card stock itself is pretty good. It's more rigid than Morgan Greer in terms of flexibility, but they are, they're nice. And then in terms of shuffling, you guys know I have tiny hands. I think I've said that on a few of these. Whoops. So these are easy for me to shuffle. I've done other reviews that aren't out yet, but I explain that that's how they shuffle, so it's pretty good. But they are rigid, so if you don't like rigid cards, then I don't know. Every deck has a different type, but they do shuffle nicely. And so how do I explain this? I'll start showing you some of the cards. What I do like about this deck is that they show a different type, like a different facet of the cards. So it's not something where they are just sticking to traditional imagery. It is considered like a queer deck. I think they call them like in tarot it's considered to be a queer deck, because it is kind of like funky. There's a lot of sexual elements to this deck. This is one of my favorite cards in this deck. But I mean, you get the idea. Like, it's sexual in nature. You can tell by the fact that it's called Slutist Tarot. But it's interesting because they don't go based off of the traditional meanings. They really do have a lot of their own interpretations. And so that is something that I do appreciate about this. It's like, even in the descriptions, they highlight different elements of the cards, which I really do like. And so it's cute. It's aesthetically a really nice deck. My one, I guess, complaint, or the one thing that I notice about this deck is that the messages themselves, and this might just be personally, there are certain decks that I have a really strong connection with, and some that I don't. I don't have a strong connection to this deck. I guess the messages aren't particularly potent for me. And that's just a personal thing. I don't think that that's necessarily universal. But this deck reads on more of a superficial level rather than a deep level. So there's not a lot of nuances to these cards. There's not a lot of micro expressions, or I do like the context of the cards. So you can see, like, this is the Devil card, Vice. And so I do like a lot of what they include, and kind of the contextual elements that they have here. But as far as receiving the messages themselves, I actually don't find that there's a great level of intensity in this deck. And I definitely like decks that read more intense than anything else. And so that is one thing to keep in mind, is that there's a lot of great references. You know, it's kind of like mourning, grief, like traditional Three of Swords. It's kind of like they do have a lot of great cards, but it's just like, personally, I haven't found this to be a really strong deck, I would say. So it's a good one, but I think that this is a deck that I don't use personally. It's something that I only use for my channel. I only use it because it's a fun deck. I don't use it because it has a lot of potent messages, if that makes sense. So if I'm reading for a friend, if I'm working with clients, I do not use this deck. This is a deck that I use for aesthetic reasons only. And I think that may have something to do with the artists, or that may have something to do with the whoever wrote it or was coming up with the messages. That's something that I really feel come across, is when there's an author or artist that that really took time to create super concise, clear messages, or messages that have a lot of nuance. That does translate in the deck, and that's not something that I get from this. So I think that that's where I feel the disconnect. But overall, it's cute, right? It's one of those things that I use for aesthetic reasons only. So that is what I would recommend, is like, this is something that you can get and feel good about in terms of it being aesthetically pleasing. But if you're looking for intensity, this isn't the deck that I would recommend. So it really is just about what you're looking for in a tarot deck, and that's basically it. But I hope that you have enjoyed this tarot review. And again, if you've seen any decks on my channel that you are interested in having me review, just let me know. I'm not at a point where I'm going to be purchasing decks for reviews in this moment. I'm only going over the ones that I have already. So that is where I'm at with this process. And as usual, I wish you all nothing but the best. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until next time, have a good one.